If I remember correctly, you used some sort of tactic in geography that was designed, and at the time I didn't know the terminology, to prevent social loafing in group projects. What is this tactic, and how do you think it affects kids on both sides of social loafing?
It's called ability grouping is what I do, and I basically just put kids that are in the same grade area in the same groups, because I never felt it was fair when I was a student that if I was a good student and I got a kid who wasn't, I care about my grade, and inevitably if you don't do your work, it affects me. So when I put the kids who are A students together, they know that their group members are going to do what they're supposed to. And then it also puts pressure on those kids who are not as good as students. They can't rely on that A student if they want to do well. Unfortunately, what I've seen, to look at your question, it says, how does it affect both kids on both sides? The A students, they do very good work. Or the good, I shouldn't say the A students. The better students do have good projects. They do what I intend. Their work is, usually very good. And a lot of times what I see, when you put three kids who are failing together, they just don't even do it. Or they do it very poorly, and their work is reflective of their overall grade. So I don't know if it really affects it in a positive sense. I know the better students like it because they know that they're going to work with kids who care about their grades, will do their assignments, will work outside of school, will do extra research if they have to. So, yeah, it was mainly done just to help those better kids, just because I think that's fair.
Do you think that social loafing is reduced when kids are put in a group with friends? If so, why do you think that occurs?
The friends thing is tough. Pause.
Yep.
Usually kids like working with their friends better, so I think social loafing would probably be reduced because they get the chance to work with their friends. Again, that's assuming that we're talking about students that care about their grades. If you put three friends together who are not good students, then you're almost guaranteed, and their friends, you're almost guaranteed that their work's not going to get done, because they're going to sit there and visit about things that they're not supposed to talk about, and it's just not going to be profitable.
Have you ever seen social loafing reversed? This is common in third world countries like China, and kids working harder when they are in a group. And if so, what do you think motivates these kids to put in the extra effort when it's a group grade?
That's a good question. I don't really see the reversal of that. Usually the kids that work hard individually are going to work that same way when they're in group work. So your better students are going to work good in a group. They're going to work individually by themselves. I think a lot of times what happens is those kids in the middle, those average students, they sometimes may work harder in a group because they may not normally do their work that great. And when you put three average kids together, you may get better than average results. Whereas if they're by themselves, it's probably going to be average to below average. That's a good question. I don't know the answer for that one.
Do you think the harder working kids ever see the loafers and decide also to not put in much effort? And how do teachers motivate these kids who are put in a group with someone who they know will not put in the effort they will?
I don't see harder worker kids dropping down to the loafer level. That's just not the way most of them are wired. How do I motivate kids? Usually you motivate them just simply by, the threat of failure, repeating the class, doing poorly on the assignment, just things like that. Motivation with some of those kids, I don't know how you do it even without group work. That's a tough question too.
How do you think that de-individuation, which refers to the reduction of self-awareness and inhibitions that can occur when a person is part of a group whose members feel anonymous, affects kids in a group? Do they then become loafers themselves?
Yeah, I didn't know what this concept even meant.
It's like
you're making me look bad.
Like the KKK and the Nazis. When they put the uniform on, they just
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
They become that. Again, I don't. If you put 3 loafers in a group together, they're all going to just know. But there is an element to that, I would think, especially when I think of like when kids who are viewed as not good kids or not good students. I think some of them do live up to that prophecy. I always tell students that I don't care what type of grades they get outside of this room, so long as they do my work. I don't care if they're not good in math or not good in Troutman's class, for example. For me, it may not be that case. If they show me that they want to do my work and they do what I ask of them, their grade's going to be reflected. It's not like I'm going to run to Troutman and say, well, Casey's getting a C. What did he get for you? Oh, he flunked your class? Well, I'm going to flunk him too. So I think some kids pick up on that my class is different. I don't see them, although I think some of them probably do become what you expect them to become. And I'm probably guilty of that too. What are you doing?
Have you recently been a loafer yourself? Example, cheering in a crowd or sitting in a meeting with a bunch of teachers, and what was your thinking behind this, if you have?
I'm guilty of loafing when we have those early outs or when we have those all-day in-services. I don't cheer in crowds, I can tell you that. But in meetings, I do. My mind wanders. I don't pay attention. I can be... I wouldn't say I'm not openly, rebellious, but I'll doodle on my paper, or I'll, like during basketball season, I'll write out a basketball practice schedule or something like that instead of what I'm supposed to do. But the part where you say, have you recently been, I think all of us are loafers at something at some point in our lives. I just think that's, you can't, I think it'd be impossible for anyone to be 100% hard working towards every aspect of their life. There's got to be a loafing aspect to some part of it, I would think.
So that pretty much answers the next question about social loafing being inevitable.
Inevitable. I just think it's unavoidable. I don't think that it's something that you can. I mean, you want to minimize it as best you can, but I don't think it's. And I think in some part of your life, you do need to do some loafing. You can't be so high strung where you're working, doing everything all the time. You're going to kill yourself. You got to scale it back at some point. Rate's a good question too.
How much do you think social loafing occurs in a workplace such as Farner-Bakken, and are loafers noticed and or punished?
I work at Farner-Bakken now, and I worked at Pella Roll Screen when I went to college 20 years ago in the early 90s. And there's definitely social loafing that occurs in workplaces. If there were people that you could work with at both of those locations, and you knew they weren't very hard workers, and you didn't work as hard. And on the flip side of that, you could work with people who work like crazy, and then you have to do that because either they expected you to, or they would say something if you didn't work at their same level. So most definitely, social working takes place in the workplace.
It is said that in other cultures, such as China and Israel, that social loafing is reversed and that individuals work harder when they are in groups than when they are by themselves. Why do you think that this occurs in other countries in China and Israel, but not as often here in the United States?
We live in a culture where we stress the individual. That's why. This is something that's basically beat into us as kids, and we are told that you can be whoever you want to be. And over there, especially China, I don't know so much about Israel, but in China, it's a group mentality. You work for the benefit of others. It's that socialistic concept in China where you have to do for the betterment of others, not just yourself. Whereas here, we're kind of the byproduct of a capitalistic society where you care about yourself first and foremost. And over there, they don't have that strong sense of individualism that we do here.
Last question. You being a basketball coach, do you ever think that social loafing occurs in basketball? Example, if there's a Casperbauer on the team, or if you're playing at a team like Jefferson or something?
Yeah, most definitely. I don't know so much about having a good player on your team. That depends. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where your best player is a good leader, and he gets people to work with them, and you get some good players who are not good leaders, and kids don't want to work with them, so then they don't. But definitely in sports, you're going to see social loafing. You're going to have, it's basically, usually your best players set the tempo for what the rest of the team is going to do in practice or in games. As a coach, you can try to control it, but a lot of it does come down to the players and how they want to handle, practice drills, or how hard they're going to work on defense or something like that. The playing a lesser talent, we're guilty of that. Last year when we played Winterset, we watched Winterset warm up and we were thinking they're terrible, and they were. But we came out in the first half. I think we were down in the first quarter. We weren't playing that well. I think because mentally we saw them and knew that they weren't very good, and then all of a sudden they come out and they do things perfectly and they get ahead. We ended up winning because we were just overall better talented team. But I think that mindset, when you do play a lesser talent, it definitely does play a role. There's no doubt.
All right. Well, thanks for taking your time out of your prep period and answering these questions.
No problem. Those are good questions.